Well, he walked off yesterday smiling, but not a lot to smile about with those numbers against Stuart Broad. Is it technical or mental, or both?
Yeah, absolutely both. I mean, in the first place, it starts off as technical. You're trying to adjust to the angle around the wicket. Stuart Broad is just expert at getting that ball to just move away late from around the wicket, having created the angle back at the stumps. And then once it happens 2 or 3 times, it gets in your head, and then you're trying to figure out a way of stopping nicking it. And so then you end up getting bowled through the gate. And then you make an adjustment to stop yourself getting bowled, and then you go back to nicking it again. And it just completely drives you insane. And I really couldn't come up with an idea or an answer for how he gets away from it, apart from perhaps, I don't know, running down the wicket, getting a thigh pad on it and getting up the other end and waiting until the spell's over, because at the minute it just looks like it's going to happen every single time. And Stuart Broad, running off towards the Western Terrace, absolutely expecting to get him out every time he bowls at him.
What would you do? How would you set up to that type of attack? Round the wicket, angling in, taking it away.
Yeah, I faced a little bit of Anderson and Broad, and it's tough for a lefty because they're perfect at this art of actually using the angle and still using their wrist to take the ball away. It's not early swing, it's quite late. I've set myself up a little bit differently. I've set myself up to play every ball as if it's coming in. I don't worry about an outside edge or it taking away. So that's
then just hold the line with your bat.
Just hold the line, and if I nick it, I nick it. So if your defense is good and your judgment is good and you train that in the nets rather than actually trying to get better on the ball, there is an option.
Yeah. I think Warner's issue really is that he goes so hard at the ball. So very rarely, even if he does exactly as you say, he tries to play the line, imagine the ball's coming back in again, but because he's thrusting his hands at it so hard, if he does nick it, always carries. Now, Kumar, one of the things, in my mind's eye watching him bat, was just how relaxed and how much he allowed the ball to come to him. And therefore, if there is that little bit of movement and you're not going towards it, you can actually just pull the bat on the inside, or you just hold the line and the ball goes past. But one of David Warner's great strengths is how he goes at the ball and how aggressive he is. In Australia, when you don't get as much lateral movement, that's brilliant. But here, you have to be a little bit more gentle.
And one other thing is that he can have a chat to the captain, and Michael Devanuto's here next to us in the
if you hear some cricket balls being hit, Pat Cummins is just, he's missed one.
Is to have a chat and ask for trust and come up with a new plan. Like you said, run down, actually be more attacking, use the crease. If you get out, but you need the trust of the team and your opening partner to be able to do that and say, this is my plan, this is how I'm going to counteract it, and you've got to trust me to get this. If I get out this way and I look a little bit silly, you've got to back me, and that's something that they could do if they want to keep David Warner in the side.
Well, that's an interesting point, because David Warner gave a press conference before the World Test Championship saying, I think he was trying to put any speculation to bed, saying, I'd like to retire against Pakistan at the SCG or whatever it was. He might not get there.
Well,
Broad keeps knocking him over. Yeah. He might not even make the end of the Ashes.
It's always quite presumptuous. I mean, there are very few people who get to call their sort of like their closing moment, aren't there? And they tend to be the absolute greats of the game. David Warner has been an excellent player. But there comes a time when somebody else makes that call for you, I'm afraid. And if Stuart Broad keeps knocking... I suppose if Australia were to win this Test match and win the Ashes, right, then there might be a sentimental reason to sort of say, you know what, we'll let him carry on and maybe give him to the Oval and he can walk off with a fanfare there, but we're going to look to do something different when we get back home to Australia. If they don't lose this Test match and the series is still alive, then perhaps that conversation begins about maybe taking him out of the fire line and making a replacement.
I go back to the Edgbaston Test, the first Test of the Ashes, where David Warner seemed to have made some adjustments and he was actually handling Stuart Broad well. I think if he had at that stage recognised that moment and actually been a little bit more aggressive as his innings progressed against the other bowlers to get runs behind him and use that opportunity, especially in the second innings as well. Gone a little bit more into one-day mode and actually tried to attack and get those boundaries and advance his innings and the game forward. It seems a little bit selfish, but actually it would have set himself up and Australia a little bit better as you go along in the series. I think he missed an opportunity there.
One thing he's got in his favour is catching everything at first slip. And we know how important that's been in the series on the opposite side.
Between the two sides.
Yeah, absolutely.